Thank you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا حبيب الله رب العالمين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم الكتاب المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We extend our condolences to the Imam of our time, as we are still in the days of the martyrdom of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. The title of the Imam as Sayyidus Sajidin. And we pointed out to one reality of a human being is reflected at the time when he comes in this dunya and that at the time he leaves the dunya, which is his truthfulness that he is faqir. Now there is another reality of man that is required to be reflected and which is needed by us to reach to show our truthfulness, and that is sajda. When a human being is in sajda, when he is doing prostration, that is his reality, that he is abd and God is ma'bud. And this is required of us to perform, that we voluntarily we extend and we do sajda. So from the time of the birth, which is natural, it automatically happens that the baby cries and asks for and yearns for life, right? Manifests the faqr haqiqiyya of her. Then at the time of death. Now within this period requires that sajda. That's why Hazrat Nuh says, if I was to be living for 60, 70 years, I will just do one sajda, for his whole life is enough, right? So for us, like as we said earlier, sidq, truthfulness, it is something that has has a reality which is outward, which is zahiri, which we have to manifest by speaking the truth, by behaving in the truthful way, and also requires those actions like as sajda. This needs to really, transfer to our iman, to our inner, to our heart. The hadith that we analyzed last week was by qawl, by that istiqamat, a person will not have that istiqamat. By his speech, heart will not be istiqamat, firm, unless his heart is not firm, the iman is not firm. So it affects. So Marhum Sayyid Ali Qazi was well known for his sajdas. He would have long sajdas. He would always do, his sajdas, his prostrations were long. So it's something practical for us to perform, that we should extend and prolong our sajda. Our prostration that we perform, particularly after our prayers. Unfortunately, we are so busy in our activities, our, work, that whatever we have, we pray, but that sajda, that recitation of tasbih and sajda, the taqibat, it's overlooked, it's not performed in the rightful way. So one of the practical ways that one could really perform to bring that sort of ubudiyat, that closeness to God, as God He Himself have said, that the point where a human being is closest to God is the point of sajda. Why? Because it's a reflection of truthfulness, that he is abd, he is manifesting that, he is showing that he is truthful to God in his action by his sajda, right? That's why when a human being, when an insan is truthful, he is very close to God. If he is truthful. And his truthfulness is faqr wujudi. He is faqr by his wujud. Just like how 3 is an odd number, the oddness of 3 is in his essence, we are like that. So whatever it is God. So we have to manifest, we have to go in sajda, we have to speak, we have to ask him. We have to directly ask him to assist us and help us. Right? And with the examples that we have, with the teachings of Ahl Bayt alayhimus salam, we take lesson and we, alhamdulillah, enhance ourselves. Now, inshallah, we need to wrap it up. Today's discussion, it's been prolonged, it's been extended too much, so that we go to another quality, another sifat. Now, one more thing, I always try to point out to the principles and give you the structure on which you can build. Like as we said, truthfulness, the greatest truthful is God, right? Now, in regards to the quality of truthfulness, is it the sifat or it is the behavior? What is it? Truthfulness is what? Is a behavior, okay. Behavior becoming sifat, okay. So in reality, what truthfulness itself is what? Is it behavior? Speaking the truth is an action. Truthfulness is a sifat, is a quality. A person, like as we said, such like, for example, generosity, to be generous. Generousness or generousness, or to be saqi, to be generous. That generous, for a soul to be generous is not that he gives. The soul needs to be generous. It could be a given time where there is everybody is, for example, hypothetically speaking, there is no need of giving, right? So if he is not giving, doesn't mean that soul is not generous. Or there could be a time that a person is giving, but in his soul he is not generous, but he's just doing that action. So that is behavior. Act of charity doesn't stamp or doesn't rectify or doesn't show that this person is generous, right? He is doing the act of charity, but he's not really generous. That's the difference between modern psychology or modern philosophy. They tend to look at the behavior of insan. They don't focus on the sifat-e-insan. Akhlaaq-e-Islami, the sciences of akhlaq, as you have done earlier, just a reminder of the previous chapters. They concentrate on the qualities, on the sifat, right? So, yes. The goodness have been put in, yes. Yes, the question was a very interesting question where he says this, a child when he is born, he's taught to be generous, to give charity, to do, to speak the truth or whatever. To be kind, to say thank you, tashakkur, thanksgiving, shukr. Is that in him or he's taught? Potentially, as he has been given the fitra, that pure intrinsic nature, within insan, within the human being, these good qualities are there, potentially. He needs to bring it out. That's why he tends to quickly adapt to good qualities. Naturally, he's inclined towards learning good, right? He adapts to it very quickly. He learns it very quickly, right? He has that within his soul as a potential, right? Just as how he's a born believer, he is born believer. Like for example, ubudiyat, servitude. It is in the nature of man. Now the point is that this servitude, this phenomena that he has, now how this is channelized. Sometimes the servitude becomes sports, we worship sports. Exercise becomes a religion. I'm practicing religiously. We even use the terms, that I exercise religiously. What does that mean, religiously? Because it's something to do with the nature of insan. That religiosity is in his nature. Whatever he does, he kind of follows. So these maqulat, as they say, or these sort of metaphysical realities are within the potential nature of man, and then he adapts to it, then he relates to it, and naturally he accepts it. That is why if you look at the first chapter of Allama Tabatabai Risalatul Wilaya, which is one of the practical methodology of Allama Tabatabai in Irfan Amali, in practical mysticism, which is Risale Wilaya wa Allama, he talks about this, the Zahir and the Batin, and how the Batin is related to the Zahir, and why does the Batin accepts the certain outward rules without any question. For example, Malikiyat, which is the ownership, the phenomena of ownership, right? It's a metaphysical reality. It is a metaphysical phenomena, ownership, that I own something, right? Now, these laws of ownership that we have in this legislative sense, without any question, we just accept it. But when it comes to accepting God, we have to, when we are accepting these metaphysical realities, why are we not accepting the metaphysical being as God? The reason we are accepting it, because it's in our nature. There is such thing called ownership, malikiyat. So what is that malikiyat? The malikiyat, there's a relative malikiyat, like I rent a car, for example. That's a relative. I'm a malik. I'm renting a house. I'm a malik of that property, relatively. Then there's another type of malikiyat, where is the malikiyat of my eyes. I'm the malik of it. Then another malikiyat is the malikiyat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the absolute malik of everything, right? So this qanun, this rule of malikiyat, which is a metaphysical phenomena, there's a reality to it. That's why every human being just accepts it, right? So he relates this to the divine realities that are there, right? So therefore these qualities, or this sifat that are there, is there. It's now, like I said, I was trying to give you a principle here, then you can build on it. You have just in the margin, very quickly, there's a Tawheed Zat, there is Tawheed Sifat, there is a Tawheed Afal, right? So you have the Zat, you have the, Asma or Sifat. So there's no difference in, as you are doing the theology, difference in the Zat with the Sifat and the Fail. So the same way, you have certain actions of insan, speaking the truth, lying, right? These are actions which are considered to be haram, tuhmat, blaming someone, backbiting. These are actions, just like the fe'l khuda, right? The af'al khuda, right? It's the same way insan also can be parallel to this example of three different levels of tawheed, because insan is in the reflection, in the image of God. So his soul also have these three different levels. There are actions which he perform, good actions, bad actions, right? Backbiting, tuhmat, blaming, cheating, lying. These are actions which are haram to do. But where does they really come out from? They come out from certain sifat insani, certain qualities. If I have the sifat, for example, being jealous, then I will lie, then I will backbite, then I will cheat. So the sifat that is that jealousy, which I need to tackle. The sifat is that truthfulness, which is required to have. The sifat is that patience, sabr, which is needed, right? If I don't have sabr, then I will maybe cheat. Then I will do certain things which are haram. So you have the actions which stems out from the sifat that is within, which could be compared to the asma, for example. Tawheed, asma ilahi, these all beautiful names. Then you have that zat. So as a zat, we have that humanity, that insaniyat, that an insan have. So everything is really coming out of this insaniyat. This insan as a rational being, it stems out from there. A rational person is not generous. An intellectual person is not a liar. For example, is a truthful person. He doesn't lie, for example, right? So you have the model of God, then you have the model of insan, right? So that's why there's a nice narration of our sixth Imam, which is they have the soldiers of Aql, 75 soldiers of Aql, 75 soldiers of Shaitan, that are there, where Imam discusses it in detail. Who are these 75 soldiers of Aql? Who are they? Which is Aql means of Rahman, of God. Who are these 75 soldiers of Shaitan, for example, right? So therefore, this truthfulness is actually a sifat. It's within us. And then based on this nature of truthfulness, our actions are carried out, speaking the truth, for example, portraying ourselves, showing ourselves to be truthful, like sajda, for example. Sajda is an action, which is mustahab, or which is wajib. It's an action. It's not truthfulness, but it is coming out from the truthful nature of insan. Or it will appreciate, or it will make my truthful nature grow by long sajda, by salat, by, So there's a relationship with that. So these actions are, it kind of relates to those awsaf, those qualities that we are trying to enhance and understand, right? Now, as we said, that truthfulness is also watawasu bil haqq, watawasu bis sabr, right? In Wal Asr, as we talk about, the author discusses here about Surah Asr a bit, where he points out to that man is at loss. Obviously, if he's growing, or he is becoming older, gradually things are deteriorating, the time frame that he has, the health that he has, so on and so forth. But those who are kind of enjoying the truthfulness, watawasu bil haqq, so it is pointing out to the social aspect that one should enjoin, one should really encourage, watawasu bil haqq, and also with sabr as well, right? So the author points out to the social aspect of truthfulness, which is required, that a person is truthful and he could mind his own business, live on an island, for example. That is not good enough. But what is required is watawasaw bil haqq. That's why ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqin. To be with the community of truthfulness. To be, to be together with those who are sadiqin, those who are truthful. Wherever the truthful are, we should really join them. And it is a natural reality as well. As insan is a social, being, it naturally happens. All those who are truthful, God will bring them together. Zuhur of the 12th Imam, his call. All those who are truthful, regardless of, who they are, male, female, what deen, religion they belong to. They are waiting. And they will listen to the call, and they will answer it, to the call of you. Same thing happened with Imam Hussein alayhi salam, right? They all gathered. All Sadiqeen were together. They were truthful, right? And as we discussed earlier, there are different darajat of being truthful as well. You have Abul Fazl, that truthfulness of Abul Fazl to the maximum capacity that is seen, that God even appreciates and rewards him for that by giving him an independent haram. Aghay Jawadi mentions in one of the lessons that, what was the hikmat of God? All shuhada in one place buried, which is the haram of Imam Hussein. But there is a special haram of Abul Fazl. God rewarded Abul Fazl. And indeed, as we tend to, when we look at the life of the ulama, like for example, I think I mentioned this, Sayyid Ali Qazi, he mentioned Abul Fazl Abbas is the Kaaba of awliya. Abul Fazl is considered as the Kaaba of awliya. Okay, he has said something very deep. What are the khususiyat? What are the, peculiarities of Kaaba? Those peculiarities that are in the Kaaba, those peculiarities are in Abul Fazl. Right? What does Kaaba provides us? What does Kaaba do in terms of our ibadat? Right? Those things, this is like a whole list of things. First we need to have the ma'rifat of an understanding of Kaaba and peculiarities of Kaaba. The circumambulation, sajda, qibla, direction, looking at Kaaba is ibadat. It's right under the Arsh al-Rahman. All of those things. Now, these awsaf, these qualities that are there, because qualities are immaterial realities, whether that be a, house of God or a land or Arafah, because when these qualities, awsaf, are considered as maqulat, as in metaphysical realities that is around, which kind of shines at a physical thing. You see, it's not the truthfulness that insan have is not here. It is beyond that. Just like how God says, rivers of stream and castles of ruby and this and that. This is nothing but the manifestation of the name of Jamal of God, which have taken that form. Right? The reality is that Jamal, that absolute beauty, which requires a loci, which requires some sort of manifestation. Right? So the same way these qualities of Kaaba or certain, spiritual realities that are there, those are spiritual realities. Sometimes it is seen in a Kaaba, sometimes it is seen in a insan kamil, in a human being. Right? That's why if you look at the face of a Amirul Mu'mineen is ibadat. If you look at the Kaaba, is ibadat. It's the same thing there. You see what I mean? So Sayyid Ali Qazi says, so it's pointing out to that truthfulness of Abul Fazl. Sadiqeen, kunu mas sadiqeen. Be with those who are the truthful. Yes, you might have taqwa. Yes, you might have iman. But you gotta be with them. You have to be with them. You have to, a person who is muttaqi, mashallah, very great person. A person who is a mu'min, very great mu'min. But at the same time, be with the sadiqeen. That's why you have ulaika an'ama Allahu alladhina minan nabiyyin. Gods have an'am, special sort of bounties upon who? Nabiyyin and then siddiqeen. Right after that is siddiqeen. Wa shuhada wa salihin, for example. Apparently it comes right after, because nabiyyin also have been selected because of their quality of truthfulness, as we said in a riwayat, in a tradition, that it says that the prophets are chosen because they are truthful. It's one of the greatest quality, because they have to deliver the message of God and they need to be truthful in their deliverance. Now, then, just to not to go too much into tangents, we will find certain Siddiq being mentioned in the Quran, as we said. For example, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا. Hazrat Ibrahim considered as someone who is Sadiq, Siddiq. Or وَأُمُّهُ صِدِّيقَةٌ. Hazrat Maryam salamullah alayha mentioned as that. Right? Now, these are the Siddiqeen, and we need to recognize them, and we need to be with them. It's a social concept, it's a social reality. Now, the qawl that he's speaking, right? As in a narration, it says that the person who speaks is more of a value than what he's speaking, because his speech is coming from his soul, from that quality of truthfulness. Right? So once again, it's pointing out to the importance of truthfulness within the soul of an insan. Yes, he has to speak the truth, but who he is and where it is coming from, in the eyes of God, that is more of a value. That person, not that qawl itself, not that saying or the speech what he is speaking. So I have a narration from the Imam. Yeah. گوینده سخن راست از سخنش نیکوتر است. امام باقر علیه السلام. گوینده means the person who is giving, who is speaking سخن راست, the speech. از سخنش, even what he is speaking, he is بالاتر. He is more higher than that. You know, what he is speaking is, he's speaking about, you know, haqq, truth. But even more important than what he's speaking, the person itself is, and is more valuable in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So that's the value of it. Now, in another hadith, Imam Hassan Askari says, what is right opposite to truthfulness or speaking the truth? What is exactly opposite? Lying, which is completely opposite, right? So the same way as it's been mentioned that if you put all goodness in a room and lock it, you know, if you put all evil in a room and lock it, and the key to that is lying. So, you know, if a person lie, then obviously he is opening up all of these sort of evil traits or qualities or whatever that are there. So speaking the truth, right opposite to that is lying. So the same way, if all goodness is placed in a room and the key of all that goodness is speaking the truth. If all evil is placed in a room and the key is lying, then if all goodness is placed in the room and the key of that is that truthfulness. So through speaking the truth, we will enter all goodness. You know, we'll have all other, you know, good qualities that we could acquire. So through speaking the truth. It is difficult sometimes, you know, one have to be very strong in his sort of nature, in his you know, in his character, to really to be truthful and sincere. Now sometimes this truthfulness is not just speaking, it has many aspects to it which requires a greater deal of ihtiyat of us. Instagram, how truthful is that, right? You know, we take pictures, we put things on there, you know, we always want to portray the best, you know, change it. You know, perhaps, you know, some of the ulama in the past used to do ihtiyat for not taking pictures or not portraying, not making things appear, which is not really, you know, it's not truthfulness. For example, the shopkeeper, you know, he waxes the apples, he shines the apple, puts the good apples in the front, right? And the bad apples in the back, for instance, right? So that's, you know, he's trying to sell. Well, I'm doing my work is ibadat, trying to look good, for example, right? So that manifests, that showing of what is not truthful, what is not real, is also one have to be very careful about, right? One should be very careful about what one is showing, what one is not, you know. And that is why, I mean, when you look at Ayatollah Bahjat, masalan, you know, he was so motad, as they say, very cautious in every affair. Like, for example, his Risala. There was no Ayatollah on his Risala. Al-Abd. Al-Abd. That's the reality of insan, right? So he wants even that to be, you know, very clear there, right? That's why he was who he was, you know, as you all are aware of, you know, and as he was truthful, he would reflect the truthfulness of us in him. You know, there was a man who was in some European country or somewhere. He he had a lot of businesses and stuff, and he wanted to give the khums, right? And then he was saying that this is the khums I want to give to Imam Zaman, but I can't find anyone, to really give. So one day he was just traveling on his motorway, and all of a sudden a name came up as somebody told him, it was Mukashif or whatever, Muhammad Taqi Bahjat. He said, who is this Muhammad Taqi Bahjat? So he had some links with some of the, perhaps, I don't, a sheikh and from Africa, like Sufi sheikhs and from. So he would go to them for, guidance and stuff. So he went and he said, this is what happened. He said, don't worry, I'll let you know. There's this person in Iran, in Qom, and you go to him and he will take you to Muhammad Taqi Bahjat, right? And don't think that, he will give you some zikr or something to do. No. And he'll give you time and you'll sit with him and speak. No. You go to him, you sit in front of him, and you just look at him. And when you look at him and he looks at you, if he gives you something, when he looks at you, you got it. If you don't, then don't ask him anything. And this was very famous with Agha Bahjat, that when he looks at someone, it will show the reality of that insan. I mean, it was fascinating. And I personally have experienced it. When I started, my hawza, you're talking about 93. I went first on a ziyarat visa because, then wait there, then they transferred that to a student visa. So it was summer time and he was in Mashhad, right? That was the first time I met him there, yes. So here I am, young, 21-year-old, from America, and always active in demonstration, Sunday school, teaching there, and trying to organize and, feel very sort of, proud of oneself, huh? Right? Then I went there, I'm doing so much. I'm from America all the way far, came for ziyarat, so you have this sort of, then when heard about Agha Bahjat, he's so spiritual, and then went to him, and then he looked at me. And as soon as he looked at me, all of these things which I've mentioned just came to my heart. That, hey, well, who are you? What are you thinking of yourself? And you're nothing. I said, oh. Okay, I realized that this man told me who I am in terms of the reality, that I'm really nothing. So what? You're doing so much, you're active, you're doing Islamic stuff and teaching, it's nothing, right? In terms of the essential reality, it's gunahkar, is a person, who is, committing sins and so on and so forth. That happened in summer. Then after a couple of years, right, I went to him again, in Masjid Fatimiyya, that's where he used to lead. With the same sort of, here I am now, admission, got and started studying and this and that and the other. Same thing going in my mind. So I met him and kissed his hand. He looked at him. He looked at me like that. It's exactly the same thing. I said, Ya Allah, I haven't changed, So, because he was truthful and he was reflecting the exact image of that person. He was pointing out to the truthfulness that I have in me, that I'm not what I am trying to portray here. That's who am I really. So he was reflecting that through his eyes to me. Why? Because he was truthful. As he was truthful and as he was reflecting the sinners, he was also reflecting divine. Because he was truthful. That's why they say, a mu'min, his heart, or an inside, a perfect man, his heart is like a mirror. And the sins that we commit becomes like sort of dust and rust and all that. So if we clean up these sins, then that divine light will reflect. So when an insan becomes the mirror, it reflects. God reflects in him. Because God's presence, وَهُوَ مَاكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ, Surah Hadith, where you are, God is there. أَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَسَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you turn, there's a face of God. They say there's a Farsi poetry. When you look yourself in the mirror, that is you, but not you, the same way the whole creation is God, but not God, right? So insan, a human being, is manifestation, is a reflection of those kamalat ilahi, of those perfect qualities of God. To the extreme are the Ahl Bayt alayhimus salam. That's why they have said nahnu asma'ullah, right? So then you have the awliya, people like, for example, I was talking about Marhum Agha Bahjat, for instance, very truthful, what to that extent, his truthful nature, that his dreams were considered as hujjat, as a proof for senior scholars such as Sayyid Ali Qazi. Agha Dastaghaib, Shaheed Dastaghaib, the Gunahan Kabira, the greater sins, I think we have that book. He was also student of Sayyid Ali Qazi Tabatabai. He migrated from Iran to Najaf to be in the service of Sayyid Ali Qazi. So he sold everything in Shiraz, whatever he had, and then he came to Najaf to be with him. Now, Agha Bahjat had a dream that, Agha Dastaghaib goes back to Shiraz and he leads a prayer in Masjid al-Jami, and he's like a sun going high and is giving light. So this was the dream of Agha Bahjat. So he comes and he told Sayyid Ali Qazi just before the lesson, we tend to, it's a habit, you go to the teacher before the lesson to speak to him. Then Agha Dastaghaib came, who was a senior to Agha Bahjat in terms of the age and all that. He came. And when Agha Dastaghaib came, Sayyid Ali Qazi said, pack up your bag and go back. Leave. You have to go back now. Agha Dastaghaib says, I sold everything in Shiraz. I came just to live with you here and spend my time, rest of my life in Najaf. But now the teacher is saying something, you got to listen. It's Qazi, right? Then exactly he did what? Said Qazi said, and the dream which was of Agha Bahjat, that he will go there to Shiraz. He went to Shiraz. Loads of people came welcoming him, and they took him to Masjid al-Jami, and he led the prayer there, and eventually he was shaheed, and he was raised and giving that light and guidance. Exactly. So Agha Bahjat, his truthful nature was so unique that even his dreams were considered as hujjat, as a proof for senior. Obviously, a child who have become baligh while praying behind Mirza Hussain Naini. Mirza Hussain Naini was a great scholar, great usuli, who was one of the greatest top-notch student of Akhund Khurasani. And Mirza Hussain Naini was in Karbala, the one who kind of fashioned or tailored the Wilayat Faqih that we have today, with some changes, but a very, revolutionary in terms of his usuli thought. Very revolutionary in terms of his usuli thought. And then him and then Mullah Akhund Khurasani, Mirza Hussain Naini were leading figures for the constitutional revolution that happened, And then Akhund Khurasani died with a very strange sort of way. They say he was shaheed. Anyways, so when Agha Bahjat migrated from Fuman to Karbala, he went. And then he started his studies there. He started praying behind Mirza Hussain Naini. And his prayers were for him, Agha Bahjat says, was very different. Because Agha Bahjat had that inner eye or third eye, which was not for every person to have, to see the bawatin, the inner reality. Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi says, one of the zikr that he used to do a lot was Ya Sattar, because he doesn't want to see the ayab of the people, right? So he prayed behind him, and then when Agha Mirza Hussain Naini died apparently, then he moved to Najaf, when he heard of Sayyid Ali Qazi. So obviously that child who was constantly, wanting to improve himself, very truthful, very sincere, very pure, and his prayers and tawajjuh, his focus, his methodology, as they say, for irfan, for mysticism, was salat. He says everything that we need to have is from salat. It is through salat we could reach wherever we want to reach. That's why his focus on salat, whether it was in Karbala, he was very particular, whether when he went to Najaf. And then other students, they all say that whenever we used to travel, we would ask Agha Bahjat to lead. He would lead for us. And his prayers are famous, when he was there in Najaf and in Qom, and how Masjid Fatimi, and how he used to cry in prayer, and particularly when he was leaving Salat, for example. Salam, when he's giving salam, because he would say that, prayer is the time that we know 100% we are carrying out the command of God. Right? That act, that minute, that's why he would cry so much. He is with the beloved. Now when the salam comes, it's the time of khudafisi. It's finishing now. So it's very difficult. Because that period, I was exactly doing what God have asked me to do. It's clear cut. Right? I'm with my beloved speaking, no disturbance, nothing. It's me and her. Me and God, for example. Majnoon or Layli, for instance. But now the salam is khudafisi. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi. Now we have to separate now. Obviously there's the world of multiplicity. That tawajjuh, that focus, which is there, will not be there. So his methodology was salat. So for us as well, our prostration, our prayers, praying on time, these are the things that will help us to increase our sidq, to increase our truthfulness, inshallah. As-sidq salahu kulli shay, because sidq is considered as the righteousness of everything. Is that sidq which is required, and we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us sadiq. That's why we recite in Munajat Shabaniya, wa lisanan yarfa'u ilayka sidquhu. Provide me with a tongue that it yarfa'u ilayka, it just goes higher towards you, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who are sadiqeen, inshallah, and grant us closeness to the awliya and to the anbiya in this world and the hereafter, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin. Allahumma salli. Yes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
More important than speech. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
I just want to clarify because recently I've been listening to a lot of people where the focus, the significance is given, rather more importance is given to the message of Imam than the Imam himself. And sorry, this is a complaint, but
yes,
new generation seems to be taking sort of pride that we should
it's
do
very important. Yes.
But from what I understand, you spoke this out.
Yes.
It was Imam saying.
Yes.
Speaker is more important than, of course, Ahlul Bayt. Nobody more important than Ahlul Bayt. Then Ahlul Bayt themselves as personalities become more important than the message itself.
That is true.
Is that correct understanding?
Yes, that is true. That's a very good point, very practical point even, that sometimes we get into these practicality and trying to rationalize things. And while doing so, we overlook many hidden realities, such as you are saying, maqsad is important, what purpose is important, what Imam did is important. Yes, it is important, but not to forget the Imam himself.
My question is, are the Imams more important than the message itself? Because when you give the example, Imam was saying, why did he left Imam for Karbala, for Islam? So Islam becomes more important, or does the Imam Hussein still is more important than Islam itself?
Yes, it's like, once again, if you put, God have said that my speech is the most truthful speech. So the question is, the Quran, his speech more important, or God? Obviously it's God. where this speech is coming from. Right? His speech is, whatever is in its speech is important. Justice and bir and taqwa and all of that things are important, that we need to really, carry it out in our life. His speech, but where is it really coming from? It's coming from God. So the same way, this Islah, of this reform in the Ummah, that which Imam Hussain wanted, is important, but we should not forget the Imam. And as a matter of fact, let me put you this: if we have the ma'rifat of the Imam, then his message will be automatic, whether he carries that reform or not. Other Imams also wanted reform, but they were not given that opportunity which Imam Hussain had. Right? So if we have the understanding of the Imam, then all of the goodness we will understand. Nahnu, there's a hadith from the sixth Imam where he says that we are the source of kull khair. All khair, we are the source of it. Any righteousness, reform, whatever we talk about, Amar bil Maruf, the source is the Imam. So we shouldn't forget that. Yeah. Now, how practically we will, how practically sometimes we overlook the Imam is, for example, zikr musibat, crying, commemoration, majlis, azadari. These are very important, that we have to uphold these things, which points out to that, we have emotional attachment with the Imam. We are attached to the Imam. Not to forget them. Sometimes we go the other way. Oh, the message is important. What is all this? Right? No. Message is important. Keeping that in mind, the azadari is important. Wearing black clothes, yes, it is very important. To change the decor of the masjid, to cry. That's why you have all of these emphasis on the azadari of the Imams. From the Imams themselves, the greatest sunnat of Azari, Imam Zainul Abidin and Hazrat Zainab, isn't it so? Right? They established it. From the Imams to the present scholars. Bahjat was very adamant of prayers and dars and lessons. But when he was ill, he would come and teach. And he would regard teaching as one of the ways of getting shifa. Right? So he will never cancel his lessons. At the end of his life, he was getting old, ill, and very difficult. He would cancel the dars, for example, or even Jamaat prayer he will not lead. But when there is majlis in the masjid, he would come and sit. He will never cancel azadari. So it shows that the ahmiyat, the importance of the azah. Yeah.
Any other questions from sisters?
If I understood correctly, what you were trying to explain earlier, you said ubudiyat, which is serving Allah, is in our fitrah, and that we're more willing to accept the physical divinity. So what would you say about atheists who don't believe in the existence of God?
Right. They also are in the performance of servitude, but not to God, but maybe to their nafs, or maybe to some other. Because, it is natural. A man must religiously do something. As there is a khutbah of Imam Hussain before leaving to Mecca in Medina, he says, why God created the creation. He said, God created the creation liyarifuhu, in order that God be recognized. Fa'arafu abadu, when you recognize God, you will worship Him. Fa'abadu, when you will worship, mustaghni an ibadati masiva, you will be ghani an ibadati, from doing ibadat other than God. You will be self-sufficient, your soul will be in tranquility because you're worshipping God, true God. So you will be ghani from worshipping others other than God. So ubudiyat, servitude, is in the nature of man, right? Now this, as it is in the nature of man, either if he have the ma'rifat of God, he will worship God. If he doesn't have the ma'rifat of God, he will have different gods, earthly gods, maybe different fashions, celebrities comes and goes, but he will religiously follow that. He will take direction from it. Right?
One more question, last question.
Sorry, I just
Yes.
wanted to know the word. You said that sifat, and what was the action word?
Which one?
The word for actions. That
Fail.
sifat and
Fail.
okay.
Yeah. Zat, sifat and fail. Well,
Is it done for another one?
One more. That was a short one, so one more.
I just want to confirm what you said regarding the sifat and the behavior we spoke about earlier. I just want to confirm if this is what you said. Did you say that us as human beings, we possess all different kinds of sifat, like we possess generosity, we possess hasad, we possess truthfulness. But is it that the quality which is nurtured, which is predominant in a person, or is it just something that comes naturally? Or does it have to be nurtured, a particular quality?
right. Yes, I said, all of these qualities it really comes out from that humanity. That insan is human, that which is a zat, for example, as a human being, that human nature that he has. And God have placed that fitra of ubudiyat, He has placed that fitra of knowing God. So this fitra will, as it goes along, as he grows naturally, he will have these positive qualities in him, right? And then these qualities requires to be nurtured more, and that's why the Quran is there, that's why the prophets are there to nurture this, these qualities that God have placed in us. Having said that, there are also, certain qualities that for nafs it's easier to adapt. Not that it is evil, but it is because nafs learns, right? Greed, it's in the nafs. Greed is in nafs, and it has to be there. But greed for good we need to channel it, right? That story of Isa alayhi salam. He said, God, why greed? Then God said, okay, I'm this farmer who's working, I'll take the greed from him. So God took the greed for him. So he was working, he left everything and slept. So that is needed. That's why you have Ilayka Ashku. Imam Zainul Abidin is complaining of this nafs. So it is easily adapted to these things that are there.
Thank you very much.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala